During the early hours of April 21st, 2012, in the city of Tucson, Arizona, a 6-year-old girl named Isabel Celis went missing from her midtown home. The incident happened as the family slept. The house remained silent. After searching the house that morning, Isabel's brother promptly reported Isabel missing.
911, what is the emergency?
Hey, I need you guys to calm down. My sister's gone. Someone broke in and grabbed her. Hurry, Matt.
Okay, what is your name?
Sergio Celis.
Who else
Yeah.
is there?
My dad, just people are looking. Just
Okay.
hurry, man.
We are on the way, okay? How old are you, Sergio?
14 going on 50.
Okay, anything else that you know of? Do you know what she's wearing?
She's probably wearing pajamas.
Do you know what color?
Pink, maybe green, I don't know.
Did you guys hear anything?
No.
No.
I don't know, man.
What's your sister's name?
Isabel Mercedes Celis.
Later that same morning, during another 911 call, Isabel's father, who was also named Sergio, tells the dispatcher,
We woke up this morning. I went to go get her up for her baseball game, and she's gone. I woke up my sons. We looked everywhere in the house, and my oldest son noticed that her window was wide open and the screen was laying in the backyard. We've looked all around the house. My sons are running around the house looking for her.
The screen was on the ground outside?
Yes.
Isabel's disappearance spawned a massive search in Tucson by approximately 250 law enforcement personnel and included national media attention and the public scrutiny of her parents. FBI experts and tracking dogs were used during the investigation, and detectives followed up on more than 2,200 leads in the case, 1 year and 8 months after Isabel's disappearance. During the early hours of New Year's Day in 2014, a man named Michael Dwayne Leday was having a very loud and intimidating argument with his then-girlfriend Cindy Burnett. The argument began while they were walking in the 2200 block of East Sunderland Vista, near East 36th Street and South Campbell Avenue. As the argument escalated, a man named Patrick Balbastro and his girlfriend Valerie Kalongi were driving through the South Side neighborhood when they saw Michael Leday assaulting Cindy Burnett. Patrick called 911 and told the dispatchers that he was going to help the woman. When he got out of the car, Michael Leday attacked him. Patrick's girlfriend Valerie also got out of the vehicle to intervene. Michael stopped attacking Patrick, but he then got into Patrick's car and ran over Patrick, Cindy, and Valerie multiple times before fleeing the scene. After running over the 3 victims, Michael sped off in Patrick's car. He ditched it in the desert after hitting a tree and then fled on foot. He was then finally located in Kansas City, Missouri, and was captured after an intense 30-minute foot pursuit through heavily wooded areas and creek beds that involved more than 40 law enforcement officers.
The new year got off to a deadly start in Tucson. 2 people were killed and another critically hurt when they were repeatedly run over by a car. Police arrested Michael Leday in Kansas City, Missouri yesterday. Michael Leday is now officially in Tucson. He was extradited to Arizona overnight.
Leday is the suspect in a New Year's double homicide. He is now facing 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder, plus other charges. Leday led about 40 law enforcement agents on a chase through the woods before they finally arrested him.
Michael's defense attorneys would later go on to say that everyone had been drinking that night, and Michael was not in a clear state of mind. Patrick Balbastro and Cindy Burnett were both killed in the attack. Miraculously, Patrick's girlfriend Valerie Kalongi lived to tell the tale.
A deadly start to the new year. 2 people killed, 1 clinging to life.
They did everything that they could to make sure that I lived, because I almost died.
Tonight, the survivor of the New Year's morning attack speaks for the first time. In a story you'll only see on 9 on Your Side, Justin Shecker visited Kalonji as she continues to make progress in rehab.
Before I wasn't able to go into the chair, now I can kind of pivot into the chair.
Now Valerie Kalonji is focused on learning to walk again, a miracle made possible by the emergency room surgeons at the University of Arizona Medical Center.
Everybody loves them for saving my life.
But there's another man Valerie credits for her survival, her boyfriend Patrick Balbastro. She found the strength in the interview to stand up and show us her shirt with Patrick's picture on the back.
When I think about things or think about how hard it is, I look at his picture to help me go. And then to see him smiling, it makes me laugh, makes me smile, you know. I wish he was here next to me. All I remember was the arm stretched out and me having his arm saying goodbye like that.
About 6 months after this New Year's Eve attack, on the afternoon of June 3rd, 2014, Valerie Kalongi's 13-year-old daughter, Maribel Gonzalez, goes missing after telling her family that she was going to visit a friend. Maribel's home was located just minutes away from Isabel's home. When Maribel did not come home the following morning, Valerie called the friend, who then told her that Maribel never arrived. Valerie immediately reported Maribel missing. Search efforts ensued. However, just 3 days after being reported missing, Maribel's body was discovered in a desert area northwest of Tucson, near North Trico and West Avra Valley roads. A medical examiner ruled her cause of death as homicide by unspecified means. There were no immediate suspects.
One family, two horrific tragedies. Months later, Kalongi, still recovering from life-threatening injuries, has a different type of healing to do. Just last week, detectives confirmed the body in a remote Marana area is that of 13-year-old Maribel Gonzalez, Kalongi's daughter.
1 week shy of her 14th birthday, the family of Maribel Gonzalez is hoping someone can offer clues into the Tucson teen's death. The plea eerily similar to the situation they were in a few months ago. A few weeks after the attack, Maribel sat down with 9 on your side.
I love her. I'm just happy that she's alive. It feels good to have people support my mom.
Citing severe decomposition, it took detectives 3 weeks to identify Maribel's body. According to her family, they first reported the soon-to-be 8th grader missing on June 4th, after she didn't show up to a friend's house. On June 6th, deputies, unaware it was Maribel at the time, recovered her body here in a remote desert area in Marana, nearly 40 miles from her east side home.
Following the tragic discovery of Maribel's remains, the search for Maribel's murderer continued over the following years, along with the search for missing 6-year-old Isabel Celis. Thousands of tips poured in, but each tip led investigators to a dead end.
Say, how are you doing to people? And they're like, oh, living the dream. And all that goes through your head is living the nightmare, you know, surviving the nightmare, and doing everything you can to stay strong, stay healthy.
As mentioned earlier in this video, throughout the years following Isabel's disappearance, her parents fell under public scrutiny. This is partially due to the razor-sharp statements made by former prosecutor turned television journalist Nancy Grace.
It's the father. I've analyzed over and over with specialists, with experts, the voice reaction in the 911 call and other times that he's spoken. And there is an umbrella of suspicion over him today, whether anybody wants to admit that or not. It's there.
Nancy would question several people close to the Celis family, including friends and even direct neighbors. She would use a combination of her cutthroat reputation paired with any controversial statements to direct the public's focus onto Sergio, Isabel's father. More specifically, she would express how she felt his urgency during the initial 911 call did not reflect that of a concerned father.
I don't know a single parent that when their child goes missing laughs on the 911 call. Dan, when you ever have a child, maybe you'll understand. But I lost John David for about 45 seconds in Toys R Us. I've never felt such panic in my whole life. So, you know, you can say whatever you want to, but I know what I know, Dan.
In fact, she even pointed to some specific moments where he seemed to be laughing or enjoying the situation.
Okay, what's her actual birth date? Okay. Is Mom there also?
She had just left for work. I just called her and I told her to get her back home.
She would also highlight how Sergio would use the word abducted instead of disappeared during his initial call.
Hello, I need to report a missing child. I believe she was abducted from my house.
These accusations grew to such a point that Child Protective Services stepped in and ordered that Sergio did not have any contact with his 2 sons. Although it is assumed that this order was brought on due to the public attack on his character, the exact reason has not yet been made public. However, police did state that Child Protective Services noted that this order was the result of a call that took place sometime during the year before Isabel's disappearance. Sure. With total confidence in her husband, Isabel's mother Becky spoke out at a public event defending Sergio and proclaiming his innocence.
My husband's a great father. My husband loves those boys, loves my daughter, is a great husband, a great father to the boys.
Becky, too, faced accusations of involvement and criticism of her actions as a mother.
You know, Leslie Austin, psychotherapist, New York. I've never had a case where the mom did not stand by husband, boyfriend, lover, live-in.
Right. Well, the wife is part of the system. If it's a strong marriage, a strong family, she's going to defend him until proven otherwise. There's a disbelief there.
Well, also, I think that it touches on the mother's own judgment.
Yes. Women often bond with the husband over the children, unfortunately, where they should be protecting their children.
Although it's quite apparent that Sergio is calm during the initial phone call, it is well documented that each person has a different response when coping with high-stress situations. Whilst it is more common to associate hysteria and panic with these dramatic moments.
Police, what's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? Oh, my God, please. Okay,
Please,
there's somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath.
Please,
Okay?
hurry.
Patsy.
It is not impossible for some to respond by shutting down or even by cracking jokes as a way to ease their emotional tension, especially when surrounded by their children who look up to them for guidance. In child abduction cases like these, it is not uncommon for the parents to find themselves under the public microscope. But in the case of Isabel Celis, it is generally perceived that the attention on Sergio was unfairly heightened by a powerful, opinionated woman with a very public platform. This negative attention continued, but slightly died down between 2015 and 2017. It officially reached a halt on March 31st of 2017, when officers released the news that they had in fact located Isabel's remains earlier that month, but waited to make the discovery public until after receiving DNA confirmation.
In April of 2012, 6-year-old Isabel Celis went missing from her East Side home. The Tucson Police Department has actively reviewed and followed up on over 2,200 leads in this case from the day that Isabel was first reported missing. Now, earlier this month, human remains were uncovered from a remote area in Pima County. A portion of those remains were sent to an out-of-state lab, it's an independent lab, for DNA analysis. And unfortunately, the results of this DNA analysis did confirm that the remains were those of Isabel Celis.
Isabel's remains were discovered close to where Maribel's remains were found, near Trico and West Avra Valley Roads in Pima County, just outside of Tucson. When Tucson Police Chief Chris Magnus was questioned regarding what led them to this location, he responded by saying that the discovery was not made by happenstance, implying that the search team was led there through a tip, connecting piece of evidence, or a direct statement from a person of interest. 18 months following this press conference, on September 14th, 2018, another press conference was held by the Tucson Police Department. This time, officers were announcing that a major indictment had been issued for the man that they felt confident was connected to the murders of both Isabel and Maribel.
Pima County prosecutors and all of law enforcement never gave up the hunt for the killer of these two little girls. The cases went unsolved, but they were never closed.
More late-breaking news now. A major felony indictment in the cold case murders of two young girls in southern Arizona. For years, the families of 6-year-old Isabel Celis and 13-year-old Maribel Gonzalez have been left with nothing but questions. Both girls disappeared without a trace. Both of their bodies turned up in the same similar area of a desert in Pima County. So what happened to those little girls? Today, their loved ones and everyone else following these cases over the years have their answer.
The man that the indictment was issued against was a 36-year-old man by the name of Christopher Matthew Clements. As it turns out, Christopher Clements was already behind bars for a burglary charge at the time of the indictment. He was only connected to Isabel Celis after officers found handwritten letters to another inmate named James Sullivan while doing a routine check of Christopher's cell.
This past June, while Clements was in custody at the Maricopa County Jail, a routine check of his cell turned up handwritten notes tied to another inmate in jail. TPD interviewed that inmate, James Sullivan. Sullivan told detectives that Clements talked about Isabel Celis, saying he knew where she was and that he was concerned there might be DNA evidence related to Celis's hair in the trunk of his car. Clements reportedly told Sullivan that Celis had been dumped in the desert and that she had been strangled and had chemicals poured over her body. Clements told the inmate he never intended to keep Isabel alive. This is the Sellis home where Isabel was kidnapped in April of 2012. According to inmate Sullivan, Clements showed him photos of the Sellis house that he kept hidden in the pages of the Bible in his cell. Clements described how he took Isabel from a bedroom window.
The FBI interviewed Clements in February of 2017, and he said that he knew where Isabel was buried, but refused to lead them to her unless 2 Pima County burglary cases against him were dismissed. He would also state that although he knows Isabel's whereabouts, he was not involved in the abduction whatsoever.
I'm not doing this to be a good Samaritan, I'll be honest.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
I was involved with some people, and that's how I know. I'm not in here because I'm a good Samaritan. I'm not in here because I care so much about the sanctity and morality of society. I could really give. What I care about is my family.
Right.
Period. I didn't do this.
Okay, how about...
I didn't have any direct involvement with her kidnapping.
If you gave us where she's at, would we be able to go and scoop her up this afternoon? Could we do that? Is that possible?
With the information that I have, yes.
Right.
You could. Absolutely. Without a doubt. You could. No.
All right.
You could have her within 12 hours.
12 hours? It would take us that long?
I said within 12 hours. I think the information that I have is a lot more valuable than a conviction or me staying in here.
We're going to check it out, and I want to see if...
I'm glad you guys
if there's anything to it.
The investigators then made a deal with Chris, promising to dismiss the burglary charges as he requested, and to release his vehicle, which was seized during his arrest. This deal did not protect Chris from any charges that may arise following the discovery of Isabel's remains, so Chris continued to negotiate with the investigators.
I mean, you're changing your tune. You're saying you're not directly...
I'm not, but I've never changed my tune. I've always said that I want to cover my...
You're not directly
100%.
involved.
It doesn't matter if I was or wasn't. I told you I'm not directly involved. I said that I'm not directly involved. But I want the language on there to reflect that no matter what you guys' opinion is, whether or not I'm directly involved, it doesn't matter. It can't be used against me. I would have given you guys where she's at, and it wouldn't have been just bogus bull. It would have been the truth. And there would have been closure to this case. You guys would have, as a bonus, you guys would have found out about something else too. By default.
Can you tell me what that is?
No, because if I told you that, then you guys would know exactly what direction to go.
Despite his best efforts, Chris was denied any form of immunity. Chris then went back to his cell and contacted an attorney. Just 3 weeks after his initial interview, Chris asked to speak to the investigators again.
As far as I understand, this is the location.
Avra Valley and Trico Road. Kind of familiar with that area. It's pretty remote. I ask, are we talking now about a gravesite versus a location where she's alive?
As far as I understand, she's not.
She's not alive.
As far as I understand, I mean,
last time we talked to him, he said he knew firsthand, and he did say she was alive.
I don't know anything about
when I walked out, I was saying she's not.
Is it a burial site or just a place where a body was dumped?
What I know is that's where. That's 100%. That's the area.
The reason it took 18 months after these interviews took place to publicly announce the indictment of Christopher Clements is because investigators wanted to process all of the evidence that they had uncovered and link Christopher to both Isabel and Mirabel's murders. They also wanted to search for evidence of other crimes that Christopher could be charged with, including the possibility of 2 other victims. Throughout their search efforts, officers managed to connect Christopher's DNA to Mirabel's body. They also found schoolwork and a child's purple sweater in the home of his girlfriend, along with sexually explicit photos of minors on a computer and internet searches such as child killer found not guilty and body found in desert. Worst of all was that Christopher really should have been a suspect at the time of each disappearance, as he was known to be out of jail and residing in the same neighborhood. And he had an extremely colorful criminal history.
In 1998, Clements was convicted of 2 sex offense charges in Oregon. He served 18 months in prison and had to register as a sex offender. 8 years later, in 2006, Clements was arrested again, this time for failing to register as a sex offender in Florida. Clements was then arrested again in 2006. Court records show officials in Oregon charged him with violating a protective order against stalking and harassment. A year later, Clements was in Tucson. In 2007, he was charged with giving false information to law enforcement officials after they say he gave a fake name and date of birth to a police officer. The officer stopped Clements after seeing him take something out of a bus stop trash can. In 2008, Clements was again charged with failing to register as a sex offender. Over the next 4 years, records show that Clements lived at several different places around Tucson, including one apartment about 2 miles from Sellis's home. Clements avoided any run-ins with law enforcement until 2017, when he was arrested in Maricopa County for burglary and fraud. Court records also show that he owes more than $20,000 in child support.
On September 24, 2018, Christopher Clements was arraigned via video in the Pima County Superior Court. The families of both Isabel and Maribel were in the courtroom during the video arraignment. Christopher pleaded not guilty. Chris would go on to face 2 separate trials for each murder. The first trial he would face would be for the murder of Maribel Gonzalez. And in September of 2022, Chris was found guilty on all counts related to Maribel's death.
Guilty on all counts. After more than 11 hours of deliberating, that's what the jury returned in the case of Christopher Clements. Tonight, for the first time, we are hearing directly from the defense. After a 2-week trial, Christopher Clements sits in jail for the kidnapping and murder of 13-year-old Maribel Gonzalez. 5 jurors believed Clements guilty of felony murder, and 7 said he is guilty of felony murder and premeditated murder. As we reported, they didn't have to be unanimous on which type of first-degree murder it was, but they all had to agree it was first-degree murder. Clements showed some slight tension before the verdict was read, rocking in his chair a bit side to side. When the verdict was read, he sat still but did not show a lot of emotion. Maribel's mother, on the other hand, fought back tears of joy. As she left, she was all smiles, finally seeing justice 8 years after her daughter was killed.
Christopher was sentenced to natural life in prison for the death of Maribel Gonzalez. He was also sentenced to 17 years for kidnapping, which will be served consecutively. The trial for the charges related to Isabel's murder began in February of 2023. However, this trial ended in a mistrial as the result of a hung jury. The retrial was originally planned to begin in November of 2023, while Chris was also facing a new trial after officers discovered a deadly weapon in his cell.
Switching gears now, convicted child killer Christopher Clements will stand trial for a sharpened pencil found in his cell on the eve of his second murder trial earlier this year. Corrections officers found the pencil the night before the murder trial for Isabel Sellis was set to begin, and that trial ended in a hung jury, but prosecutors aren't giving up. He's facing a new murder trial in November, plus another trial next year for promoting prison contraband inside his Pima County jail cell.
The retrial for the charges related to Isabel's murder was scheduled for November of 2023, but it has now been delayed again and is set to take place in 2024. Since this case won't reach a full conclusion until a verdict is reached regarding the charges related to Isabel's death, and now the charges related to the deadly weapon as well, I will definitely be posting an update video when everything is over, using as much court footage as possible. Until then, Christopher Matthew Clements currently resides at the United States Penitentiary, Tucson, Arizona. As for Michael Leday, the man who murdered Patrick Balbastro and Cindy Burnett and critically injured Maribel's mother Valerie on New Year's Day in 2014, he was convicted of 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 57 years behind bars.
Guy, after the judge announced the sentence, we had to leave the courtroom, but from the hallway, we could hear loud applause as family members of Leday's victims learned that he will spend more than 5 decades behind bars. We heard Michael Leday speak for the first time today as the judge offered him a chance to say something before his sentencing.
I never remember anything that happened like this. I never got to hurt anybody. And I'm sorry.
I know it's not going to change anything. I never met the pretty body.
Michael Leday currently resides in the same prison as Christopher Clements, the United States Penitentiary, Tucson, Arizona.